A few months back, I made a video in this series talking about foods that we perceive as healthy that are often not for one reason or another. And for a lot of them, it was due to an overabundance of sugar offsetting the positives. We then flipped the script and did the opposite, discussing foods often perceived as unhealthy and then explaining why they had wrongfully been given that reputation. Well, today we're going to flip that idea again, just this time over the other axis. Foods that are absolutely loaded with sugar that still have good reason to find their way into your diet. And then maybe I'll complete the grid at some point with a fourth video, though I don't really know what that would be yet. Anyway, the goal with this one is actually a bit more on the defensive side. Yes, we know that sugar in excess is not good for multiple reasons, but that doesn't mean that it's inherently harmful. In fact, it's more or less necessary. I've said it before and I'll say it again, we know that carbohydrates are the body's go-to source of energy, especially for anything with any sort of intensity. You know, like exercise, which is kind of needed for a truly healthy body. We also know that all carbs eventually turn into glucose, the base form of sugar in the body. The main reason I've practically demonized sugary foods thus far is because it's a response to the way most people's diets are built in practice. Almost always too much sugar and not enough of everything else. But again, I really do think sugar has its place. It just requires two things. The first is knowledge, and the second is self-control. While I can give you the former, the latter is entirely up to you. So with that being said, here are 10 foods that are full of sugar but are still worth eating. First up, we've got the sugary food with a capital S, the natural and beloved honey. Unlike everything else in this video, honey is basically just sugar, though it's often marketed as healthier than what most people think of as sugar. Have you ever wondered why? As we know, honey is made by bees when they collect nectar from flowering plants. They eat it, digest it, and regurgitate it. And if you didn't already know that, I probably just ruined it for you. Anyway, the recommended serving size of honey, a tablespoon, about 21 grams, is roughly 60 calories with about 17 grams of sugar. Yeah, it's definitely a lot of sugar. So what gives? Well, the main reason honey is considered the better sugar is due to its antioxidant content, namely a variety of flavonoids and other phenolic compounds. Now, if you've watched this channel for any period of time, you should be no stranger to antioxidants. But for the unacquainted, these are compounds that protect cells from oxidative damage caused by unstable molecules called free radicals, effectively combating unnecessary inflammation and detrimental diseases. And honey is just loaded with antioxidants: quercetin, catechin, apigenin, naringenin, luteolin, caffeic acid, coumaric acid, ferulic acid, gallic acid, syringic acid. Are you starting to see a trend here? Usually these are reserved for fruits and vegetables, but here they are in the sweetest natural treat to ever exist. Honey is pretty much proven to be an outright better sugar alternative for heart health, having a far better impact on LDL cholesterol and blood pressure. Now, ideally you want to search for raw honey to avoid processing, therefore preserving the good stuff, and to make sure that your honey is actually 100% honey. Some companies like to mix in other syrups to cut costs. Of course, it's still sugar, so don't get ahead of yourself. But I will concede that it is the better sugar, an objective improvement. And I feel like I'm not alone in this opinion, it just tastes better. And now it's time for some atonement for the past. A food that I may have ranked too harshly in an older tier list video. Figs. And the main reason why is that I just straight up did not know that fresh figs were so commonly eaten. I never really see them where I live. But yes, figs are a fruit that can be eaten fresh or dried. When they're fresh, they're about 16% sugar, and when dried, they're about 48% sugar due to the lack of water. So definitely among the more sugary fruits, but not as bad as I said before. Figs are a good sweet tooth alternative to added sugar and other sugary products that likely not only contain more sugar, but a less complex nutritional structure overall and probably more harmful additives. Because yes, figs do contain more than just sugar, namely some micros, though none in particularly high amounts. These include manganese, potassium, magnesium, calcium, iron, copper, and vitamin B6. They're also a fair source of fiber, about 3% when raw and 10% when dried. Figs are also a common remedy for gut problems, especially for those with IBS. As for how to eat figs, when fresh, they can be added to jams, sauces, oatmeal, cereal, and salads, as well as just eaten on their own. And when dried, they're common in baked goods and granola, as well as again on their own. And apparently it's really hard to pin down what they taste like. Some say they taste like berries, some say honey, and some say dates. Speaking of which, If there's any one food I talk down on that you all collectively came rushing to defend, it would be dates. Often referred to as nature's candy, dates are incredibly sugary, with medjool and deglet nor dates hovering at around a 65% sugar content. Though despite all this sugar, it's usually not a glycemic index issue, as dates in reasonable amounts don't tend to cause surges in blood sugar like other foods with a comparable sugar content. For me, it's mainly more of a calorie issue and that they don't tend to offer enough beyond the sugar. Dates are noticeably fibrous at about a 8% fiber content, and they provide some copper, potassium, magnesium, and vitamin B6. Overall, again in the right amounts, they're heart protective, largely due to a combination of carotenoid and phenolic acid antioxidants managing cholesterol levels while also preserving brain function as well. If you're going to eat something sweet, it might as well be something that helps your body in other ways. Now, to this day, I still don't really know why so many people insist on dates being a superfood, but they definitely have their place. As for how to eat dates, you can usually have them on their own or implement them while cooking in smoothies, sauces, toppings, nut butters, granolas, or as a sugar substitute as a paste. And to describe how they taste, I've often heard medjool dates taste like caramel, which I hate. And deglet dates are often said to have a somewhat nutty flavor, like a cashew, which I love. Honestly, I think I'm leaving this segment more confused than when I started. An important thing to remember is that sugar doesn't only come from plant foods. Dairy also naturally contains sugar, and while I can't defend a lot of what people have done with milk, there are definitely a few products that I can get behind. The one I want to highlight today is Kefir. This is a drink that's been garnering a lot of attention lately due to its unique qualities. It's made by adding kefir grains to milk and allowing it to ferment. These aren't your typical grains though, in fact they're actually not grains at all. They're gelatinous yeast and bacteria that kind of look like baby cauliflower if you squint hard enough. These grains ferment the milk sugars, then they're removed, and then boom, there's your new drink. The result with the sugars is that it turns lactose, a disaccharide, into glucose and galactose, which are monosaccharides. So this typically ends up being a better choice for those that are lactose intolerant. The actual sugar content in kefir can vary depending on the brand and how it's made. When it's made homemade, per cup or 240 milliliters, it can go as low as 7 grams, but many brands add sugar, and I've seen some as high as 20 grams. Nutritionally, beyond sugar, kefir is often low-fat by design. 1 cup contains about 9 grams of protein and a few relevant micronutrients including calcium, phosphorus, vitamin B12, vitamin D, and even some vitamin A. Probably the main draw of kefir, though, is the probiotics, live bacteria that have several health benefits once in the body. The human gut typically contains between 10 and 100 trillion bacteria at any given time, and if you didn't already know that, I probably just ruined it for you. Anyway, these bacteria have a symbiotic relationship with us. They get a safe environment and a steady stream of nutrients, and in return they aid with digestion, produce beneficial short-chain fatty acids, and improve brain function. And also, they're kinda mean, or I guess the better word is territorial, as they combat harmful bacteria, preventing their spread. Now, this all sounds great, but it's recommended to not drink too much as probiotic overconsumption is possible. 3 cups a day seems to be a general safe limit. Also, kefir is probably better made at home to completely avoid additives, including the often added sugars that landed it on this video in the first place. While natural sugar is most associated with fruit and dairy, some vegetables contain a fair amount as well. And a surprising example of this is beetroot. Now, I've already talked about beets many times before, so I won't go too in depth here. Beets naturally contain about 5 to 8% sugar. Despite a fair amount, their actual effect on blood sugar is minimal, and the other qualities that make beets unique are rather impressive. They're rich in nitrates, which the body converts into nitric oxide. This helps lower blood pressure by relaxing and dilating blood vessels. It enhances cardiovascular performance by reducing oxygen needs by improving the efficiency of the mitochondria, and it improves brain function by increasing blood flow to the brain. Beetroot also has a powerful anti-inflammatory effect due to pigments known as betalains. Beetroot has always been an interesting case because if you just look at the numbers, it's rather mediocre. However, as often as I focus on numbers, sometimes they don't tell the whole story. Another surprisingly sugary vegetable is shallots. At about an 8% sugar content, they are the highest in sugar of the allium vegetables. Onions and garlic are 2 of the foods that I have talked about the most, and it's always in a positive light. And shallots contain many of their unique properties. Firstly, it has a relevant vitamin C, vitamin B6, and potassium content. But more important are its sulfur compounds, notably allicin, which gives them antioxidant, antibacterial, antifungal, anti-cancer, and blood pressure lowering effects. effects. Shallots actually contain more than onions, though less than garlic. If you're looking for a sweeter way to include foods like garlic and onion, because let's be honest, they have a very strong flavor, then shallots may be your answer. Include them in sauces, stir fries, soups, pasta, and salads. Really, just anywhere you would normally include an onion, you can include a shallot. Now, despite some vegetables having a significant sugar content, we all know this principle lies more with fruits. And grapes, of all things, receive some criticism for how sugary they are. Grapes are a very popular and very healthy fruit that just happen to be on the high end sugar-wise. And at a roughly 17% sugar content, it is a relevant amount. That's pushing about the same percentage as something like ketchup. So, what makes grapes different from ketchup? Well, again, it has more to offer beyond sugar. Grapes are a significant heart health aid, shown to lower blood pressure and LDL cholesterol levels, with this often being attributed to its resveratrol antioxidant. And resveratrol combines with many other antioxidants, including quercetin, ellagic acid, vitamin C, and several anthocyanins, to make grapes just as protective as any other typical fruit. Despite the sugar, grapes are still proven to preserve the health of your skin, hair, brain, eyes, etc. Though I must be sure to mention that most of these are found in the skin, so if you remove the skin for some reason, there's a lot less there. Grapes also contain melatonin in the skin, a hormone that's supposed to help regulate sleep. It's rare that you can reduce nutrition down to a single variable, and I think grapes demonstrate this pretty well. And another go-to example of a fruit having quote-unquote too much sugar is the mango. And at about 14% sugar, it's definitely up there when it comes to fruit. But like grapes, there's so much more to mangoes than just that one factor. Mangoes are nutritious. They're rich in vitamin C and carotenoids, also copper, folate, and vitamin E. Mangoes are also very polyphenol rich, containing all of anthocyanins, catechin, camphorol, gallic acid, and most of all, the essentially signature mangiferin, all of which protect the body's various systems as fruits tend to do: immune, heart, digestive, and so on. Point is, it's still a fruit. It deserves just as much appreciation as most any fruit, as the evidence points to the fact that in reasonable amounts, mangoes are no more likely to cause issues like diabetes or metabolic syndrome than any other normal fresh fruit. If overconsumed, they'll give you a bit more of an immediate blood sugar spike, but beyond that, the main concern with all this sugar is, as with anything else, just extra calories. The bottom line is, if this is your fruit of choice, don't fear it, just eat it. This next food to me has always been a strange case, that being tamarind. It's a fruit, though it doesn't really look like one to me at first glance. Tamarind, when raw, is nearly 40% sugar. It develops a higher sugar content as it ripens, making it one of the higher caloried fruits by weight. That being said, it's also one of the most micronutrient-rich foods, containing several B vitamins, magnesium, potassium, phosphorus, and iron of all things. Overall, the nutrients and antioxidants, including epicatechin and procyanidin, do exactly what fruits normally do in preserving bodily function, though its unique nutrient profile makes it feel a bit less like a fruit, as many of these nutrients are not typically found in the food group. Tamarind can be used to add a unique, kind of tart, kind of chewy flavor to many dishes, like soups, sauces, and desserts. But they can also just be eaten straight out of the pod, so long as you spit the seeds out. Admittedly, this is one of the few fruits where sugar can actually become a real issue, so be smart. And I saved the best for last, the one that I wanted to talk about the most and have wanted to for a while: whipped cream. Bet you weren't expecting this, but hear me out for a minute. How much whipped cream do you actually eat? It's pretty much exclusively used as a topping, and you put on what? 1 to 2 tablespoons, 5 to 10 grams? It's basically sweet air. And at least in my experience, even in that small amount, it makes so many things better. Now, I have what I'm going to call a seasonal sweet tooth. It comes and goes, but when I have it, whipped cream is my absolute favorite way to temper it. Without a second thought, I'll add it to anything even remotely sweet. Oatmeal, pancakes, fruit, especially berries, yogurt, cottage cheese, anything with pumpkin, sometimes things with nut butters, and it can even go with coffee if you're one of those weirdos who drinks that. It has been such a catch-all solution for me, and it's because it's so hard to go wrong with. In that 2 tablespoons you're adding, it contributes maybe 50 calories. A bit of milk fat, a bit of sugar, but that's it, and then your sweetness is solved. If I were to ever make a clickbait type video about how to beat your sweet tooth, this is probably what it would be about. However, this is not that, because we are at the end of the video. But as crazy as it may sound, whipped cream has worked for me, and I think it's worth testing if it works for you. If there's anything you get from this video, I hope it's that sugar doesn't have to be the enemy. The real enemies haven't changed, and I don't see them changing anytime soon. Excessiveness, lack of knowledge, lack of self-control, and of course the unnecessary tampering with of natural blessings just to make a buck. Don't focus so much on the what. Focus on the how and the why. That's how you're really going to get to where you want to be. Now, if you enjoyed this video, or at the very least learned a little something, I encourage you to subscribe as I have plenty more of these on the way. I also encourage you to share it with someone who you think might find it helpful or interesting. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments what other topics you think would fit this 10 food style. And remember that all I ask is that you do your own research and advocate for your body. You only get the one.